So here we are. We are in the Nutmeg Tavern. Welcome into this nice warm tavern. We even have the fire going. We've got the warming spice, which is known as nutmeg. And we're going to be talking about staying warm in the winter, all the different things they were doing in the 18th century, probably some of those same things we're doing today. And yes, I decided I would put on some of the same things I was wearing in the thumbnail because I wanted to stay warm, right? It is, it's like 18 degrees out, which is warm for the past like week here. We've just been having this horrible, super cold, like everyone else. And in fact, the other day, I got out in the car and it said it was -5. It started, which let me tell you, I remember, when I was a kid having a car and no car would have ever started at -5. It's like, forget it, it's not gonna start. Anyway, welcome into the Nutmeg Tavern today. I'm your host, John Townsend, and yes, we're going to be talking about fun 18th century stuff. I am joined by Lauren, who is on the chat.
Hi.
In the chat, talking with you people. And Ivy, who's on the console.
Hello.
And we've got a smattering of kind of content today, and kind of working on that whole concept of staying warm in the winter. In the 18th century, especially in the early 19th century, they were going through some weird weather things. And they had, mini ice ages kind of going on, times when it was colder than normal, and like it is right now, both even for Great Britain as well as for North America. One year when basically the crops just didn't work because it was so cold, and with the weather burst, I thought we would kind of touch on some of that idea here. One of the people that we reference often, and one of the reasons why we reference him is not necessarily because he's so famous, but because he does a lot of writing that is pertinent, and that is Benjamin Franklin. And Benjamin Franklin is concerned with this concept of staying warm in the winter, like anybody who lives in a cold climate. And he works on this concept of the new invented fireplace, and he doesn't invent the new invented fireplace. He's working on ideas that the French had already been working on for nearly 100 years. So it isn't like he comes up with it out of thin air. But there's the idea of his fireplace, and he spoke on other kinds of fireplace design ideas at different points in his life, as well as this sort of wood stove concept that we now know as the Franklin wood stove. But here is the beginning part of that, this account of the new invented fireplace that he writes. In the northern colonies, the inhabitants keep fires to sit by generally 7 months in the year. That is, from the beginning of October to the end of April, and in some winters, near 8 months by taking in part of September and May. Wood, our common fuel, which within these 100 years may be had at every man's door, must now be fetched near 100 miles to some towns, and makes a very considerable article in the expense of families. So here he's talking specifically probably about places like the city of Philadelphia or Boston, where sometime like say 1650, you had wood everywhere and you had more than you ever needed. And by the time we get to 1750, then wood is not nearly so readily available close to town, and they're having to bring it in from nearly 100 miles. And you can imagine when you're bringing in firewood by of oxen and wagons, or horses and wagons, probably mostly oxen, it being a fairly inexpensive commodity, that's a lot of hauling. And if you've ever worked with a wood stove, a fireplace, especially as inefficient as theirs were, they were going through a lot of firewood. And so they even kind of make fun of, like Peter Kalm will talk about, he's coming from places like Finland or Sweden, and he's, there's like these people in North America, they just waste their firewood. They just go through it because they have so much of it, and they don't really work on insulating their houses or anything like that, and it's terrible. So, Ben Franklin's working on that very problem. How do we burn less firewood? How do we make our wood stoves more efficient, less smoky, and give us more heat? So, definitely, it's an issue in the 18th century, and they're working on it a lot. This is a section of, let me see. Oops, nope, I'm going to leave that for a little bit later. This is, I believe, another piece out. Oh yeah, this is a writing, sort of an encyclopedia specifically about the chimney, and I thought some of this was pretty funny. If you think about sort of what's scientifically going on with chimneys and chimney design in the 20th century, which, I mean, we really don't work too hard on our chimneys. But here is what they are thinking about what a chimney is and how it works. And here we are in the 18th century, when you would think people would have been a little more, kind of clued in. In architecture, a particular part of the house where the smoke is made, having a tube or a funnel to carry off the smoke. The word chimney, blah, 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 where that, he's like coming up with the etymology here. It is the opinion of some architects that the general reason why chimneys smoke is they're being built too wide at the bottom, so that when there is any considerable pressure of air or gusts of wind downwards, there being nothing to resist it. The room is consequently filled with smoke. And I think he means gusts of air downwards through the chimney. So it's like you want to restrict the chimney at the bottom to make it so that the air won't go. I don't think he understands what's really kind of going on in a chimney.
Well, the whole airflow thing, I like the scientific project, like it is an art, really.
The observation is grounded upon the following principle, i.e. that the rarefied air, heated air, by the heat of the fire being forced up the chimney by the pressure of the condensed air from down below, the smoke ascends, but gradually weakens as it goes up, and if so, it is self-evident that to prevent smoking, the funnel should not be too long. In other words, don't make your chimney too high. Now, there is that concept of, as that heated air goes up the chimney, it loses its heat. It's shrinking, it's losing its heat, and of course, it's going to stop wanting to go up, unless, of course, either there's pressure from underneath, or in the case of modern chimneys, where we try to insulate that chimney so that the chimney itself stays warm and it keeps the air kind of moving up through the chimney here. Obviously, they're working on some of these same issues, and they're trying to come up with, why does this work like this? Both Benjamin Franklin is working on this concept, and of course later on we get who's the fireplace counts. Rumford, like a Rumford fireplace. Again, they're working on that idea of what's really happening with the air, how can we make it work? Some other architectural idea here, which was interesting. This is kind of the inverse of the idea that they're changing their house from summer to winter specifically. Now, today, our houses are filled with forced air heating, or central heating of all kinds, electric baseboards and all kinds of whatnot. When our houses, when the electricity goes off, or the water goes off, or the gas stops flowing, our houses become sort of just basically a box that maybe shelters us from the wind a little bit, but that's about it. Our houses are dead. And all the houses in the 18th century were like that. So, you know, they didn't have electricity, they didn't have central air, they didn't have central plumbing. Of course, if you're living in any kind of winter place, why would you even think about central plumbing? Isn't even on your map because, of course, your house freezes all the time. So, you know, sometimes we, you know, it's like, oh, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? Because they didn't have, you know, steps 1 through 7 before you get to, you know, the idea that we're thinking of. So here is this idea kind of played out in the oddness of the idea of an awning. So we have awnings. Sometimes we see, it's not as popular today, but fabric awnings on the fronts of stores used to be on the windows of houses. We would have awnings because we needed them. We needed them to help control the heat inside of a house. And of course, you wouldn't leave an awning on in the winter because then you want the sunlight to come in your window and heat up the inside, right? So here's this is 1789. This is from a court case where we get someone questioning, and I don't even have the full court case here because it didn't really matter. What mattered here was the idea that this attorney, whatever, is questioning a witness about the concept of an awning. Here's the question. Would you see an awning there in the wintertime? Answer, yes, sir. Question, what winter? Answer, some 2 or 3 years ago. 2 or 3 years ago, you have noticed an awning in the winter? A year ago. The answer is changing now. Question, but generally the awnings are taken down in the winter. Answer, yes, sir. No, question, nobody wants to shut out the sunlight in the wintertime. Answer, no, sir. Question, I gather from your testimony that you mean that the awning has not been replaced this summer. Question or answer, not that I know of. Has it been there this spring? Question, I am sure. As far as I can tell, or as far as I can say, it has not been there. It's like, first he says yes, and boy, I heard that attorney's probably, would you get your answer straight? Anyway, talking about this idea of awnings, taking them up, putting them back, you know, fixing if we've seen we did one of the early painting studies that we did was of a kitchen, and it was probably Dutch, but it didn't really matter. But they had curtains over the doors and other things. You could tell it was wintertime, so they were doing not just curtains on the windows, but curtains on the doors. And it's amazing how much a curtain on a window will change the heat retention in a house. And that's in, you know, the time when we have modern windows. In the 18th century, I mean, your windows were probably blowing in and out like crazy. So
like,
curtains,
would you draw the curtain?
right? Curtains are important in a house on the windows, but there are other places where you're going to have curtains in your house to keep it warm. In this case, like I'm talking about doors. Or what about curtains for your bed? Yeah, we never think about curtains for our bed, but they certainly did. That's the whole idea about 4-poster beds and curtains. It's like when you're in the shower in the wintertime. You're like, I'm not leaving. I'm just going to leave the shower on. I'm going to leave the curtain closed because it's holding in all that wonderful warm heat. When you're done with our shower, we open the curtain and, my life, it's rotten. Let's jump into some pictures. I've got plenty more to chat about here, but we're ready. So we have, it's very important in the time period, and I think I've got a reading here, pretty sure I've got a reading here, that talks about fireplaces in a house. And fireplaces are expensive. They're one of the most difficult things to come up with in the house. They're a dangerous part of the house that we have to be careful of. They're smoky, they're stinky, they're dirty, they're all these things, and yet that is your house.
Right, it's the heartbeat of the house because
like
that's where you cook, that's where all the heat comes from, and the light, and it's just extremely necessary.
So in high-end houses, you have multiple fireplaces. You might have fireplaces in upstairs bedrooms, little tiny fireplaces, and fireplaces in parlors, and of course the giant hearth that is the kitchen fireplace, the true heart of a house. But even in high-end places, the fireplace in, say, a sitting room or parlor is extremely important. And there is, Benjamin Franklin saying, "Oh yeah, we're using that fireplace 7 months out of the year, 8 months out of the year." I mean, that's an important part. And that, along with that, goes all the labor of dealing with that fireplace, not just bringing in the firewood and setting it up, but cleaning all that stuff up. And so, many times you're going to have, and especially a high-end household, you'll have hired people, char women, char people that just deal with fireplaces, cleaning them up, doing all that kind of stuff, and also cleaning the soot that comes out from it. So in the springtime, spring cleaning is massively important in a place like this, because you're gonna have soot all over the ceilings and the walls that you don't think it's there, and then you run one wet fingertip and what is that?
Oh no, now we're gonna have to clean the whole room.
Yeah, it's like, it's terrible. So that's really, boy, we've been sitting on one picture for forever. So not only do we have fireplaces that are important, but even the furniture that we have is designed around staying warm in the winter. So where do wingback chairs come from? Where do these chairs with these sides that keep you cozy, that lock in this? If you think about this, this is a reflecting oven for a person.
Mm-hmm, that's right, what we all want.
Right? Even better if it was made of tin and it reflected the heat perfectly.
We're slowly toasting.
It is, it's locking the heat in directly toward us, and it's blocking the breezes at the same time, as well as being comfy and soft and all that good stuff. So here are our classic bed curtains, and almost, sometimes they're going to have, we don't think about it necessarily, but they have a little top layer, of course, like a little roof to it. So sometimes, we see some places where the bed is in a little room.
That's
like
true. You will.
It's all like a closet stuffed in the side of the room. Or in this case, it has its own little, cloth room around it. You draw those curtains. I don't think we really think about it too much, but we see that over very much played out visually in most of the Christmas Carol representations. Yes. He's got bed curtains. I think in the story, Marley's bed curtains are sold. The charwoman takes them and sells them. Remember that scene that's in the...
Scrooge's, after he's dead.
Right,
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
She takes his...
Yes, that's right.
And he gets wrapped up in them in a certain point of the story. So we know for sure this is the kind of way he had.
And he's a stingy person. He's not heating his house, but he's staying warm by having bed curtains. That's very much part of the 18th century. And of course, I think that if we brought it back more today, we could probably keep our houses a little less warm.
Cooler, right? I actually do, in the winter, I do drop the temp now. And you're like, it doesn't need to be that warm in the winter.
It does for me, but that's because
Dad has different views.
I got a wood stove, and I can just, have this blazing fire in there. So we think of quilts today, and we generally think of patchwork quilts.
Yes.
We connect the concept of quilting with patchwork, but that's not really what's going on. Quilting is that sewing of the multiple layers together and leaving little pads in between. In fact, it's kind of like a 18th century bubble wrap.
Or somebody was asking about the down padded jackets that we have now. And this is very similar. It doesn't have the down inside, but it's creating those kind of air bubble pockets.
Yeah.
And now I did look up, and those apparently, the down jackets are early 20th century. Oh, yeah. But here we see the kind of early
It's the same concept. Same concept. Now, it's kind of hard to see in this image, but if you looked really close at it, you would see the quilted pattern within that. The one is just, single color here. The other one, color, a little bit more color, some kind of printed design possibly, I'm not sure. But they're not patchwork, but they are quilts. This is a rug. And another thing that we think of, it's like, oh, a rug, it's something soft to put your feet on or whatever. No, the rug is there to help make the room warmer. It's so, in the summertime, the rug would go away probably.
Maybe get rolled up, put somewhere else.
Take it away. In the wintertime, it comes out. It helps keep the room warmer. It makes it so you can, walk around without freezing and all that good stuff. So again, something we don't really consider as a part of if this is wintertime or not, because we've gotten away from so many of those things. This is a page out of a book that shows different sorts of objects for staying warm. So a little brazier or a little heating vessel specifically for hot plates, kind of a thing. There's bed warmers. So metal pans on sticks that you put coals into. You kind of can't see it, but in the very center there's a box for putting coals in, and you would place that on, possibly on the floor or on something else, and, just a warming spot. And then we have foot warmers there in the bottom corner. Boxes with generally, and I've got a picture later on, punch tin, sometimes a wooden exterior, sometimes they're all metal, but we put coals in them, and then you can place your feet on them to keep them warm in the wintertime. Very, very common in the Dutch paintings, but of course it's used any place where it's cool. Here's an English foot warmer somewhere in the early part of the 18th century, brass with they got a replacement handle on there, but a fancy brass one. But most of the time they were
much simpler,
yes,
right?
Much simpler.
Wood, or like the one we see on the right. This one,
right.
It survived because it was so fancy.
Right, exactly. So the one on the other side here is a wooden box with holes in it, and you can see it's kind of got a tin cup to put the coals in. Even though this drawing is from the 1930s, it doesn't matter. It's exactly like something you would have found in the time period. Again, not the safest thing ever. Of course, it could catch on fire, and then it would be really warm for your feet. And the other issue is those coals are going to put out carbon monoxide. Not the safest thing for...
Don't worry, their windows were so drafty that they had plenty of it.
Too true. Very, very true. I should have thought that, Lauren. Good idea. Here is one of our warming pans, somewhere in the latter part of the 18th century. You would fill these up. They would get really toasty warm, and you'd put them under the covers. You could also, put them other places. It was probably an art to having the right quantity of, say, ashes in the bottom of it that you put the coals on top of, so that it didn't get so hot that it would burn the items. So you could easily scorch something if it was too hot. So there are also times when you would use like a slug of metal or like soapstone, warm that up, and then use that for the same kind of purpose. Now, I am a little, I don't know exactly what's going on with this, but this is the title of the slide, the title of the piece of art, a woman holding a hand warmer. And I'm still trying to interpret it, but you can tell that it's cooler out. She is fairly well covered up. Mm-hmm. She's got very stiff and heavy gown on and multiple layers. I mean, she's not wearing a sock hat, but that's because it wasn't the fashion. But she probably has that little pot there, and it likely has coals in it. 1755. Here is a gentleman wearing something like a Canadian cap, with the fur around it, something like a greatcoat, very voluminous, or a cape, and he also has a bowl of coals there that he's using to warm his hands. Very common. Sometimes you see them specifically being used by people that are smoking. He is not, so he's just using that.
Just trying to stay warm.
Keep his hands warm. You don't see, he's not writing, so he's not keeping his ink or pen hands warm for anything else but just, I don't know, keeping his hands warm. Same thing going on here. We've got a whole brazier filled with basically fire. It's like beyond coals. And the person in the back has a muff. They're all covered up, heavy layers. She's got fur lining on her, it's like a bed jacket or something. So they're obviously wintertime and trying to stay warm. Are they even implying that hat's covered with snow?
That's how I thought he had come in out of the snow and that he was still covered in snow. I don't know for sure if that. I looked at the title and the description to see if it mentioned it, and it didn't. So I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, and I would even be concerned in that case, his very expensive hat.
I know.
He
needed to brush off some snow.
Yeah, he's going to brush that snow off before it melts because
he's got to hurry.
Yeah, it's like, well, okay, there went $100 down the drain, and that's just the price of getting somebody to fix it again.
Yeah, that's right. Look at that braid. My goodness.
Yeah, it's like, whoa. But of course, I mean, it's weird. He doesn't look like he's shaved either. So I don't know. Maybe he's not.
Maybe he's a little rough. There could, the story could be conveying more. This could be one of the more theatrical stories where it's part of a story. Yeah. I always feel a little sad. This one had very little description. And I felt like there was a lot more going on. But
yeah, obviously there is. We're going to back out here for a bit.
Okay.
We're at about the halfway mark. I wanted to make sure to get to the new and renewing YouTube and YouTube members and new Patreon folks. Each week I try to get to this. Sometimes I don't because I forget to bring the piece of paper. Rob Dick, Rita Loy, Speed and Style Tony, thank you. Lawless, David Collar, Cheeseburger Stick, Danielle Marchand, Bert Varela, Maureen Starkey, Minnie Target, Barbara Fowler, Cassandra Maria C., Greed, and then Ken Ramsberg. And then we have three new Patreon folks. So super duper thank you. Amanda's Amwater, Melinda Carolius, and Greenglade 47. So thank you guys for your great care of us. Look at there's Max, are cool, giving us more gift memberships out there, so you can take advantage of that. I got to remember to throw the paper out so that I don't cover it twice. This is from 1798 and Abigail Adams, and she's talking about winter travel. And this is just part of a couple letters here. We came 35 miles to this place from New York, our poor horses having waded and dragged the carriage through snowbanks and mud till I have dreaded their failure. And then I took a ride, this is obviously a different day probably, I took a ride in the sleigh yesterday afternoon towards Milton. The whole earth looks like midwinter, and the snow is 4 and 5 feet deep, in banks driven together and consolidated so that it will lie at the sides of the road till March or April. At Plymouth and Hingham, there was very little, not much at Weymouth, but the nearer you advance toward Boston, the deeper it is. If it had fallen level, it would have made excellent traveling. What a pain. It's like, I got a sleigh, but here it's good, there it's not. How am I supposed to get anywhere? It's like, what? You need one with like wheels that pop down, and then this. What a pain. This was kind of continuing on the traveling part. This was because isn't traveling like the worst? In fact, the reason I was on vacation and I came home early because I knew that the traveling was going to be terrible, and if I stayed till the end of the time I was supposed to be there, getting home would be nearly impossible.
Like, the weather wasn't going to be bad where you were. It was just the traveling back through it.
It's just like, why is this? Anyway, this is from a writing about I don't know, it's like a travel log, talking about being in North America right at 1776. So this is just right in our time period. And here's a section about traveling. Their manners of traveling here in winter, and I believe this is New York, in winter is very pleasant after the snow falls, which being generally so deep that coaches or wheeled carriages cannot pass, they use sleighs or sledges made light with a seat on them like an open chair. And in these they sit and drive themselves with great rapidity. The young ladies and gentlemen are so fond of this as a diversion that whenever the snow gives over falling, though it be after sunset, they will not wait until the next day, but have their sleigh yoked directly and drive about without the least fear of catching cold from the night air. Large parties of pleasure are often formed amongst them, when they perhaps 10 or 12 sleighs will drive in company, with 4 in each sleigh, to dine and drink tea and to return in the evening. It's just partying, just winter partying. About New York, this slang is very much used, and large parties of pleasure are often formed to drive into the country. Within a few miles of the city, there is a little bridge, and at the passing of which the young gentlemen always claim a kiss from the lady that sits along with him, and this is part of the etiquette that is never omitted. No carriage goes without so easy a motion as these sleighs do, having none of the jolting notion or motion of the wheel carriage, but much resembling the motion of what we used to call shuggy shoe, or a vessel before a fine wind. Don't ask me what shuggy shoe is. But there you go. When you've got the snow for a sleigh, woo! I mean, it's great. It's better in cases, especially in kind of rough situations, and the roads were terrible in the colonies as well as in Great Britain at that time. That the sleigh kind of smooths out all that and makes it that much nicer. So there were kind of advantages, and the worst is when you get to spring and all that snow melts and everything turns to mud, and now we have the situation of, well, it's like it's all snowy out, I'm not even going to bother to drive. Well, for them it wasn't the snow, it was the mud that happens in March. It's like, we're not going anywhere this month, because you just can't make it. You can't use your sleigh and you can't use your carriage, and if you want to walk in mud up to and the roads would just turn into this. I mean, if you've ever seen where horses are pastured like all winter long, and I mean, they're just stepping in it.
It's like, it's a foot of mud. Yeah. And
it's nasty.
Yeah. Sometimes we'd have to kind of move them into a different area and kind of had a wider area for them to move around in. Just when it wasn't most springs, but some springs it was just. Yeah, it
was terrible. I probably have it up here on the shelf. The Diary of Matthew Patten, and here is the daily life kind of laid out, not for anyone else's purpose, but Matthew Patten's diary is basically a day book. It's like, it's his business book. Oh, I did this today, I did that today, so he can keep track of charging people for things he did for them or whatever. But he also has just regular stuff. He talks about going and hauling firewood. And he's, over and over again. So, he might be like for a month, the entries will be, it's like, well, this day I did this work, and then I hauled firewood again. And they're probably hauling sticks, right? So you don't want to haul firewood and it's already cut down, easy to use, because it's harder to haul. But you'd cut down the trees and cut them into, chunks. 10 foot long, 8 foot long. You'd load them onto the sled, you'd carry that, and then you'd be able to work on them when you got them closer to your house itself. He would talk about using his family members, the boys, to help him haul wood. And he would say, like an entry might say, cut some wood, and John hauled home 4 jags. I don't know exactly what a jag is, whether it was 4 logs or 4 loads, but that was the term he used for it. Sometimes he exchanged his services for wood cutting. So he would do he had different skill sets. Sometimes it might be drawing up legal documents for people, or it might be surveying, or it might be other work he did. And he would say, I did this thing for him, and George is to cut wood for me. So people would deliver wood in kind. His daybook and diary, and that's from like the 1780s, 1790s up into, I think, close to 1800 in New Hampshire, is extremely useful for us to see exactly how day-to-day small community transactions were done. So we get to see the different kinds of money used, the different kinds of bartering. We could even track how long it takes some of these sort of credit transactions to get paid off or cleared. Martha Ballard's diary, from very close to the same area, she's up in Maine, in a little bit later time period, shows some of those same exact things going on. So when there isn't this easy monetary transaction, the same money everybody's using, nobody's got debit cards or crazy stuff like that, just every transaction has got a lot more friction to it, because it's like, well, how are we going to pay for this? Am I going to use this kind of money, that kind of money? Am I going to trade,
Am I trading favors?
Right.
You're like,
exactly.
I did a favor for this guy over here who is the blacksmith, and I need this from you, so I'm going to trade you the blacksmith's time that he owes me for the thing that I need from him.
So you might have triangular transactions doing it. Yeah, it's just crazy. And there is this point too. It's like, what is this when you're using firewood? What are you using it for? Well, you're using it for fuel, and it's heating your house, and it's lighting your house, and it's cooking, and it's you might use it for making charcoal, or you might do it. It's like it's the fuel, and in some places it's so ubiquitous you don't know how to get rid of all of it. Very, very interesting kind of situation. We don't necessarily have that exact kind of situation anymore. I'm going to take a breath.
Okay.
I'll let you jump in.
Let me do some
Since I've been talking for 40 minutes straight.
So here's a super chat from Mandatory Carry. Thank you. Homeless people could be helped, right? So, we still need these tools today, especially, sometimes you're like, okay.
That's right.
Time for me to remember what I do when the weather gets this cold. And then this is a question. This is a super chat with a question from Solaris. So how cold did it get on average back then? Is it the same as today? So
super good question, and of course that varies from place to place, doesn't it? It's so hard. But they were keeping track of the temperature. So not very many people had Fahrenheit's thermometer to work with, but people were concerned about that and were keeping track of it. And even in Peter Kalm's diary or his journal, a lot of times in the wintertime when he isn't traveling and doing anything, he's writing different things down out of newspapers. So he'll go to the library, get all these old newspapers, and he'll write them down in his journal. And he keeps meticulous records of the weather in, I think, the third journal. So I don't have the specifics, but we could probably do some study, and we can know what their temperatures were like.
So I was looking it up, and the summary was that someone had come to the conclusion that it was a 1 degree lower on average during the Ice Age. But I don't know what he based it on. But thankfully they did keep the records. So we can go back and look. Then here is a sticker with an enthusiastic, friendly dog. Woo. I don't know if you can see him. And then, but he looks very happy. And then here's a question from Kingdom Minded Warrior. I finally watched HBO series John Adams. Lots of cold and snow in the beginning. Wondering if you've seen it and your take on its authenticity.
I've only seen parts of it that I can remember right away. I mean, it's been a while, but what I saw, nothing went. What was that?
Right?
Why are they
I feel
doing
like
that?
we watched the whole thing, and I don't remember a single time any of us saying, "Oh, that feels out of character," or out of place, which means that they probably did a great job.
At least in the material culture of it.
Yeah.
Now there are things that are always concerning in historical things like that, when they're putting ideas into the minds of people that they probably didn't have.
Right.
And that's easy for us to do. We read into historical things and we put some motivations or knowledge in people's heads that they probably didn't have or weren't even, it wasn't on their radar, right? We have so much on our radar in the past 200 years that we think that they would have thought X, Y, Z, and it just wasn't their world. And it is hard for us to understand that world and their thinking. We look at some of their ideas and go, that's stupid. We know that's not true. And they just did not live in that world.
Yeah, that idea of trying to recreate the mental and how people would be reacting. You're like,
right.
And even other things, just like, and you can see them doing their best to do the language and the manners and everything.
Right.
And you know that they are basing it off of, things that they've read and that they're doing a really good interpretation of it. But we always know it's never going to be exactly the right, because it always makes you want to have a time machine so you can go back and actually watch it.
Right. I'm sure we would, so if we could go back and talk to some of them, it would be like, okay, breadth of some kind of, whoa, I never would have thought that, so.
Here's a question from BLWRZ4. Love the channel. Obviously, we have walled insulation now. Did they have ways to ensure the same insulation then, maybe sod or condensed wood?
Wool. Yes. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wool.
There were. So I don't have all the here, because sometimes we got questions that are kind of far outside. But I know that if you go to Frontier Culture Museum in Stanton, Virginia, the German house, they used to, I don't know if they do, because they kind of, they'll change their exhibits from time to time, but they used to show the interiors of the wall of the German house. And inside the walls of the German house, there was straw insulation, specifically formed and kind of crinkled up in a particular way. So they were, thoughtful about their insulation. And I think we do find other instances of insulation type things going on in the walls of houses, specifically sod. I know sometimes you see like moss, depending on where you're at, and if that's a really common item in a particular location, they'll use something like that. I don't know that you would see condensed wool, because that would be a commodity that was so expensive that they wouldn't have had the scrap to use it in a insulative situation in a house. More likely, any kind of wool, even if it was low end, would be used in some kind of clothing item instead. Even to the extent of they would make clothing out of what are called slubs, or the thick parts of, I can't remember the word I'm looking for right now, but the thick clumpy ends that you can't really turn into yarn. They would kind of knit those into things. And just to not waste it, or they would make clothing out of the strips of the very edges of fabric. So, clothing was so expensive that they wouldn't have used that scrap clothing or that kind of scrap material in that way. But they might have used other things, certainly.
Solaris says, members of my family had quilt frames and was wondering how they did quilting back then.
I believe it's probably something extremely extremely similar. Frames with that kind of clamp
like a giant embroidery frame, which
exactly.
is huge.
And usually square, not round. But yeah, but then again, we see embroidery frames also, and you can use that same thing, just a smaller hoop, so that you can do that in a small section. So there's the giant frames that you can put the whole quilt on and hold it all taut, or smaller frames that you can, exactly the same kind of technology.
So Speed and Style Tony says, my dad wants to know about feather beds. He says his mom had an old one and it was very warm.
Yeah, so we kind of hold beds and the bed materials all kind of in a, all of our bedding is the same now. It's like a mattress, and we expect a mattress to be like this, and pillows like that. And they were using kind of a different setup. And they would have these bolsters and mattresses that were not perfect square. They were just more like bags of stuff.
Fluff.
Bags of fluff. So you're certainly going to see feather beds and mattresses that are stuffed with a straw or whatever, right? You might have a straw mattress and a...
One of the newspaper articles I ran across was recommending horsehair for sick patients.
Yeah.
They didn't go into the details about why, but they had specific beds for different... And I'm sure you're like, oh, it's wintertime, time for the feather bed.
Yeah. So there's a lot to that, and it would be a big and kind of interesting, weird study. It's like, what are beds like in the 18th century? Nothing like your bed, that's for sure.
That's true. But along with our button live stream, we can add bed live stream to the list. Okay, you ready to drop it back into
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we still got more pictures. This one, it's turned out that there's a lot more here than... Hi. Okay, here we have somebody trying to stay warm by the fire. Notice he's got on sort of like a robe or a banyan of the time period. This might be over the top. It's sort of like you wouldn't keep on your expensive outdoor clothes when you're running around the house, but you wouldn't just run around in a t-shirt, right? No, you've got this kind of indoor robe idea, and he's indoors, but he's got like a sock hat on. This is a nightcap, and some of them are very heavy and wool. He's got the bed behind him with the curtains. He's got a candle. He's got, there's a lot there that says, I'm trying to stay warm in the wintertime, and possibly not very successfully. Here is a quilted banyan. Again, an indoor winter heavy robe to wear to stay warm.
Absolutely. Somebody was talking earlier about, you're like, it's time to put a sweater on, right?
Yeah,
and this is the equivalent. They're putting on their sweater.
Right. It's like, okay, I'm coming in, I'm going to put on my banyan. You might receive guests in something like this.
Informally,
or just, it's just wear it around my house robe. Right? Even the small clothes are different in the wintertime than they are in the summertime. So, this specifically, they were talking about the silk stockings that the person is wearing. We can see they're silk, they're shiny. That's going to be warmer. Their jackets their coats are heavy wool. This is high-end, heavy wool, warm clothing to wear as standard dress garments. Here we have stockings from the time period. Sometimes they're all kind of sewn up out of fabric or knitted completely or knitted on frames. They have different ways of doing it, but these are all, at least the two on the right-hand side have clocking, and they're a bit more of a high-end stocking. I like those stripy ones. Those are fun, though.
I do, too. I like them.
Another thing, ladies are wearing multiple layers of skirts to stay warm, and here's an outer layer skirt that is highly decorated and quilted. and that's going to be a very warm thing to wear in the wintertime. Protective, keeps you sometimes, you're both staying warm, and if you're working around the fire, you need something to protect you from the heat of the fire and still keep you warm. It's kind of a weird juxtaposition there. Everyday outdoor clothing people are wearing, and it's specifically, trying to stay warm here. We've got, knit caps and wool clothing on. We just don't wear much wool clothing.
Well,
today.
when I was getting ready to get a new winter coat last year, and I specifically wanted to over 80% wool, and I had to search for hours to find. Well, okay, I was being picky about the style, but it was hard to find. You really had to look close to make sure you were getting that high wool content, because that's not one of the most common things. Exactly,
and it's a cool looking coat too. So, hats and so many of the hats are wool, whether they're knitted or felted here, and some of these are kind of half and half, right? Mm-hmm. You can knit something and then you felt it, and it really turns dense. These are fun looking hats. They all look very, very character.
It's so funny. Like, you can imagine the person wearing them.
Yeah. Right. It is fun. It's like, oh, I know that guy.
Yep.
And I can imagine the guy under that hat. Here is sort of a nightcap that's probably kind of a soft felted wool. Do you know what that one was?
No, I'm afraid I don't know the material.
They all decorated. They decorated it up, and that, again, character wearing that. We see, here they are wearing gloves, and we can see the lady there. She's got all this, fur that's keeping her warm. The fur and the fur trade were popular in the time period, and one of the reasons was because it was cold in the winter, and that was what you needed.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, somebody was asking a question about it. A lot of times on the fur, I saw them mentioning it for trimmings on clothes, but they were asking about like hides with the fur on them, especially in North America, just, for like on the bed or just to keep.
I think you definitely see that.
Because there's like, fur is so much warmer.
Yeah.
Like even than wool, like it's the next step up of, if you want to stay warm, you use fur.
Yeah. And look at that. Wow. With the ermine. She's staying warm.
She's serious.
Yeah. Here we have the muff. And of course she looks like she's got that winter complexion. She hasn't seen the sun for like 14 years.
Very true.
But she's got a muff to keep her hands warm, and you see these huge muffs in the time period.
Giant.
Just like the size of a 55-gallon barrel.
Then you're like, here they have their muff, and then it becomes a lap robe. If they're sitting it, it's like,
exactly.
I
don't know how they look heavy enough. I don't know how they carry them.
Yeah.
Here we go. She's dressed up for, although it doesn't exactly look snowy out.
No. This to me was a bit of a mix. Like, as far as I know, this is a portrait backdrop. Like, she's probably not outside, but she has her winter gear with her.
Yeah.
Maybe she's
ready for the snowfall. Okay. We can see in this cartoon we have she's a lady police and Mr. Muff. So a police is a warm garment here, and then he's got a muff, and muffs aren't specifically just something a lady would have. Plenty of men had
keep
muffs
men
at
warm
the same
too.
time.
That's right.
Yeah. We've got capes. We've got the hoods that keep you warm. They've got multiple petticoats on. There's a lot of warm clothing here. Look at that one. Woo! Quilted petticoat. And a massive drag-to-ground cape. That amount of wool, there's just the yardage.
Well, and I mean, I've got a cape that's about like this. It's about 6 inches shorter than this. And if I wear it all day long, my shoulders hurt. Just holding that, because the wool's heavy.
Well, I'm thinking the cost of that much wool.
Yep.
So not only is it heavy to carry, it is very expensive.
Yeah.
even, this high-end jacket is wool in the time period, and would be warm to wear around. Here we got a standard kind of scene. This is indoors, and yet,
Yep, they didn't bother.
it's just like, no, don't take off your coat, don't take off your hat. You're gonna need it to stay warm because there may not be a fire in the room. Oh yeah, look at that. Riding in their sledge. We got somebody with a capote on. We got different kinds of jackets there, hats on. So all of it says winter. So good. We've got these, classic winter scenes, and they're, artists like to show them. They're bleak,
Right.
This one, of course, it is in color, so it doesn't feel quite so bleak. But we got the sleigh there, and even the sleigh in the background that he's using to push a barrel with. So using that whenever possible. We have lots of Dutch paintings. This looks like it's a French painting of using the frozen waterways, having fun on them, using them for transportation, and sometimes when the water freezes is the time when you do particular things. So I need to move something really particular across the river, and it's like, oh, we've got a foot of ice. Now is the time, to move it across. It's going to be 10 times easier to do it now than a different time of year. Again, we've got really interesting during the winter in Russia. Okay, so we see there are different kinds of architecture with the, of course, sort of log home things going on. Much more, they're ready for this. They probably have to deal with a much longer winter in this case. So even readier with the different kinds of sleighs and sleds to use with their horses and the cold weather gear. It's like, we live here all the time. We know what we're doing. Dutch, and we see a lot of Dutch paintings like this. People dealing with things in the wintertime, ice skating and all this good stuff. And let's have fun. They got bored. They went outside and had parties in the wintertime.
Yep, we were having all this cold, and I don't love the cold, but I also don't like being stuck inside. So when I saw all this cold, I'm like, okay, time to break all the winter gear,
right,
and just start getting used to it, and you're
just get used to it.
And so I keep on going outside, and
That's
you're
right.
like,
that's right,
because the winter doesn't go away for a long time. You gotta.
Yep. Another
just
class.
prep for it.
Yeah, classic Dutch painting. We see the boat with the lee boards on it. We see it's almost like a restaging of the last one. The boat that's frozen in, the little sleds and sleighs, different people using them with horses and not horses, and the impromptu tent, which we see all the time in the time period, where they just kind of throw up fabric over the top of a frame and it's like, yep, this is a tent. So lots of winter activities, and because probably the houses just aren't that warm, so it isn't that different.
Right? You just dress for the cold, and out you go, and it's not going to be that much colder outside than it is inside.
Exactly. What have we got here? The many repeated storms of snow we have had since Christmas have filled the town and country in such a manner that the traveling is still very bad, and it is imagined that the snow is upon a level between 4 and 5 feet deep in the country. Several persons who have come from Rutland and Deerfield were obliged to travel with rackets, snowshoes, to Shrewsbury, there being no paths on the road. So there we go. Lots of people complaining about. So question is, do we know where this is? Are they talking about being?
This might be New Hampshire. Well, one of the ones I grabbed was from. I actually think it might be the next one that's New Hampshire. But.
Right. I shall agree to amend made and to strike out to carry the mail by the customer route through Hampton, which is the nearest way to. Especially in winter when the snow is deep, being a road more used and consequently the paths kept better open.
right? And so this certainly made me think, because here, right, in the last couple weeks,
Yeah.
Sometimes different people will have to call off because their road hasn't been plowed that day. Now, maybe everyone else can get through because their road did get plowed, but somebody who lives on a less trafficked road, maybe not. Maybe they're still home that day.
Here's Peter Kalm in January of 1749. Some days of this month, the room which I lodged in was such that I could not write 2 lines before the ink would freeze in my pen. And when I did not write, I could not leave the inkstand on the table, but was forced to put it upon the hearth or into my pocket. Yet, notwithstanding it was so cold, as appears from the meteorological observations annexed to this work, and though it snowed sometimes for several days and nights together, and the snow lay near 6 inches high upon the ground, yet all the cattle are obliged to stay day and night in the fields during the whole winter. For neither the English nor the Swedes have any stables, but the Germans and the Dutch have preserved the custom in their country and generally kept their cattle in stables during the winter. So he's talking about winters, and he complains about, and interestingly, compared to Europe, even in the 18th century, they were talking about how much more volatile the weather is in the colonies. It's like, it gets hot, it gets cold, and it's funny because we have that kind of common saying here, just wait, 10 minutes and the weather will be different. And they were saying exactly the same thing in the 18th century, and they were comparing it to weather in Europe. So we do have much more volatile and changeable weather. And I guess this isn't on topic, so I will leave this to a different day. I did want to touch, I don't think I've got them. Oh yeah, I do. If you're looking to stay warm and you need something nutmeg related or just Townsend's related, we do have these. Boy, this is nice, heavy.
Right?
Heavy t-shirt that's sleeved, which is my favorite in the wintertime. Look at that. It's a Nutmeg Tavern t-shirt. These are available on our website, along with things like tricorn hats. But we do have non-long sleeve t-shirts. So Nutmeg Tavern. But this is the specific Christmas design. This one's cut for the ladies. And we had the dragon one someplace. And there's a dragon t-shirt too that's really, really cool. That's sleeved, and so if you want to, stay warm, you need a sleeved t-shirt. Maybe you don't need the. I always wear a sleeved t-shirt and a sweater over the top. That's just what I do, right? And I suggest it for everyone.
Layering, it works great.
I want to thank everyone for coming into the Nutmeg Tavern today. Did you have any last things you needed to?
Yeah, I do have a question here. Wait, hold on. Okay, so someone had a very on-topic question. So they had run across people who were like, okay, not the Voyager caps, they're not authentic, or not the most authentic, or maybe for the persona they were doing. And they were wondering what your opinion was on the whole Voyager cap discussion. Yeah,
boy. So the hat thing, they can be very tricky to. There are not very many extant examples. Now we did have that slide of like 8 different kind of hats from that time period, and some of them were felt, and some of them were just kind of sloppy knitted hats. And if we look at the artwork and we see what hats there are available, you don't see anything that's quite like a Voyager cap that we sell. It is kind of replicating that kind of toque hat of the time period, which is sometimes a truncated cone, sometimes it's just a tube. It's they really kind of vary, trying to understand them, and we make them like that because we've always made them like that. But there isn't anything that's exactly like that hat. And even this one, these Monmouth caps, they varied over the time period, and sometimes they kind of, the brims would stick out, and
a lot of them had taller
they
bodies.
would, sometimes be taller and kind of.
They varied them so much. We're like, guys, make them a little more standardized here, people.
Right. So, that's an interesting and tricksy topic, and I mean, we could probably, dig a lot deeper on that. And try to find all these wonderful examples.
One of the reasons we brought on the Monmouth cap was to get a cap that was more easily documentable for people. Because that kind of Voyager cap question came along. Like they were very popular when we started the company, and then people started to be like, should we use these? And so we brought on the Monmouth.
It's kind of like a cross between a couple of different things, and so. And the weird thing about it is they weren't very standardized in that time period. Yeah. And so you see all sorts of different little variations. And we have so few to work from that we think in our modern sense, well, they were all like this. Well, there may only be one that was like that. That one. It's really hard. It's really hard to do some of that and understand it. And the paintings can be so vague. They tended to wear them kind of loosely and floppy, and we don't want to do that today, and so.
I guess one of the nice things is some things are easy, like tricorns. You're like, yep, they're tricorns like that. Now, makes you happy. You're like, that one is easily documentable. Okay, so and I do have a super chat here from the Waits Experience. No comment, just to...
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It has been tremendous. Thank you, Lauren, for your work on this one, and Ivy. Ivy did a bunch of the picture work today. Every one of these live streams has a lot more work into it than you would think. Sometimes it's like, well, now what are we going to do it on? And we spend all this time and try to find what we can. So thank you so much, you guys. I want to thank everyone here for your wonderful on-point questions and fun comments and all that, and your tremendous support of what we do here by talking about our channel with other people and supporting us, physically with merch purchases or just helping us out with memberships or Patreon or whatever. All that makes a difference. Every single one of those things makes it possible for us to reach out and talk about what we do here on the channel. And sometimes it's not about exactly, maybe it doesn't matter at all what the topic is. Maybe it's just a nice place you can go and just have a good time on the internet. Shouldn't it be like that without a bunch of... Anyway, thank you so much for being part of the Nutmeg Tavern today. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and thank you for watching.